Which conservation is good conservation? A look at the viewpoints in After Preservation by Jacob Pauna. Video goals. To look at three of the drastically different viewpoints from the book After Preservation, and to summarize the main ideas and goals of each author's chapter. The first chapter, Too Big for Nature by Earl C. Ellis, really focuses on humanity's ability to shape the past, present, and future of the Earth. Ellis accepts the Anthropocene as scientific fact and calls it the new normal. He says, humanity has emerged as a global force of nature. The Earth will never be the same. And rather than despair over the implications, such as the amount of time the effects will be felt, he says, I propose that by embracing the Anthropocene, we might enable engagements with nature that yield more desirable outcomes for both humanity and non-human nature over the long run. In this continual process of niche construction, we became what we are today, the engineers and managers of a planet transformed by the artificial ecosystems required to sustain us. There is no other way for us to live on this planet. He attributes our effects on the planet to our ability of generational cultural evolutions and our constant population growth. Ellis insists that, in the Anthropocene, the biggest problem with nature is that we've outgrown it. We cannot survive without our modern technology and knowledge, and once again, rather than mourn what we have caused, he recommends a proactive plan of action, where we embrace our roles as shapers of the planet, saying, the fate of both humanity and non-human nature does not depend on sustaining natural ecosystems, but on the most proactive human reshaping of nature ever in history. In the case of protecting wildlife, he says that if we are able to get the maximum productivity from the lands we use, then we will be able to spare some. Novel ecosystems, he feels, are probably the best places to sustain biodiversity. Ellis talks of a time in which nature is shaped more by us, not the other way around. Even the wild areas of the world will be engineered to be so. Human influence in the Anthropocene is everywhere and permanent. Due to our overarching influence, the question now is not how nature can continue to sustain humanity, but how humanity can continue to sustain nature. Ellis ends by saying, to create the pristine has always been impossible, and now to preserve it, even more. The second chapter, Humility in the Anthropocene by Emma Maris, focuses on the many ways in which conservationists believe we should be helping nature. Maris talks about the thrill people feel when they personally help an endangered species, but scientific research in the matter is the more helpful activity. Our thrill, after all, is probably less important than actually saving the species, she says. A truly biocentric approach to environmental ethics stresses the importance of species survival. Recently, there has been a lot of arguments between conservationists on the emphasis of conservation. The idea of the Anthropocene is one of the most hotly contested ideas for conservationists right now, with much contention on whether or not it's real, whether it affects us, and the degree to which we control it. Old conservationists dislike new conservationists because they feel they are too focused on humans. Some old conservationists would recommend a withdrawal from nature so that it can heal, but Maris rejects this idea as well. She says, the climate change we've started, the forests we've sliced into tiny fragments, the plastic we've heaved into the ocean, so much of what we have done has the potential to drive species to extinction if we don't actively intervene to help them. We also need to make some sort of sacrifices in our daily lives to help as well. But what those changes should entail is debated as well. The new conservationist solutions are criticized as being too easy and not moral enough, while the old conservationist solutions are caught up in morals. Either way, unless the sacrifice is very easy to make or can be made culturally cool, it will not happen for more than a small of hardcore population of environmentalists. It is the debate over morals that Maris criticizes most of all. By insisting that a green future for Earth be difficult, old-school conservationists make that green future all about us, about our virtue. We have to do whatever it takes to keep ecosystems robust in the face of anthropogenic assaults of climate change, land use change, pollution, and species movement. Call it stewardship, call it gardening, call it what you will. It is our job, one I hope we can do all together. The main goal must be to stop extinctions, is Maris's main point. To protect endangered species, then we must do just that, protect endangered species, no matter what the cost, and forget about our morals. Maris says, that dignity trip is my baggage, not theirs. They just want to live. The third chapter, The Anthropocene and Ozymandias by Dave Foreman, is a strong-worded critique of conservationists who back the idea of the Anthropocene. Foreman begins by pointing out that conservationists have been speaking out how Homo sapiens have been wrecking wilderness worldwide for 100 years. He then mentions that anthropoceniacs, as he calls them, insist that since there is no pristine wilderness, then the battle has already been lost. Foreman points to the Wilderness Act as a way that wilderness is being saved and points out that they don't even use the word pristine. The Wilderness Act is good at protecting various lands with very strict laws. Too often there is confusion between the loose, fuzzy entry criteria for wilderness areas and the tougher rules for management after designation. The Earth has existed way longer than humans have, and our impact on the Earth makes up a minuscule part of that timeline. Foreman says that is an impact, not total control, not the domination of all lands and seas by man. Foreman criticizes anthropoceniacs for their constant insistence that man dominates the world. But what truly makes him shudder is the ethics of the anthropoceniacs, for having no shame over the extinction of so many species by man. He says, where's the grief? Where's the shame? Where's the outrage? Where's the sadness for the loss of so many of our neighbors? He gives the extinction of passenger pigeons as an example. He says, the passenger pigeon did not go extinct. We slaughtered them in a spree of giddy gore in a little more than a score of years. Foreman concludes with the point that we are not the unerring outcome or endpoint of hundreds of millions of years of life's descent with modification, but is rather a happy or unhappy happenstance. We were not meant to be. Yes, we can read our tale as the steadily growing sway over Earth by Lord Man, he says, but the Anthropocene technocrats who prattle about grabbing the rudder of evolution and making Earth better are the wanton heirs of Pharaoh's hubris. I see this as a direct critique of the first article by Ellis. Thoughts? I feel that all three authors have good points, but the best route is in Maris's ideas. I believe this because it is not as extreme as Ellis's or Foreman's, which I feel are the opposite ends of the spectrum, and it also focuses on saving species in a more realistic and possible way.